Okay, welcome to Negotiating the Vantage Way. We are going to lay down the foundation here of how we negotiate. And for you guys to understand, negotiating is, in my opinion, and many others, the most referable skill that you can develop. And it is absolutely worth the time to get good at this because it's one of the core competencies that can't be replaced by a machine, can't be replaced by a rank amateur. This is really where we get to truly articulate and justify our value as agents, is in the negotiating side. And there is an art and a science to it. Now, I'll preface this training and just let you know, you're going to be getting a lot of information. There is a worksheet that I will share with you after the fact, but I want to make sure that that you guys are listening kind of in real time. So I'm going to provide the sheet afterwards. So you'll have that ability, and this is recorded as well. So you will have the ability to watch it again if you need to. Eric, my friend, you and I just did this training the other day. If you have other things to do, you don't need to sit through it again.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, buddy. See ya. Now, this training is foundational negotiations training, and it is meant for a regular market. So there will be, and Simon will walk you through, a slightly more nuanced 202 version of this that is specific to a hot market where some of these tactics will not be usable. But if you take a 10-year timeline, you're going to be in a normal market for at least half of it. You're going to be in a really deep buyer's market, which this would still apply in a buyer's market for a good portion of it. And you're going to be in a hot seller's market for, maybe a third of that 10-year period of time. So we're training for the majority of the time. This is the most applicable stuff. And a lot of this stuff will work in the non-multiple offer situation even now. Okay. So I've broken the training down into 3 phases. There's a ton of info here, and it's going to be hard for me to get it all done in an hour as it is. So I will just say to hold the questions till the end, and we'll see how much time we have. And of course, you can always catch me afterwards, but I want to make this as succinct as possible. So as I say, there's 3 stages. There's before we write an offer. This is all about information gathering, figuring out how you're going to build your case around the offer that you're making, and setting the stage, making sure that you get the opportunity to present. There's a bit of an art and science to that. Then we're going to get into the offer stage, which is how you show up, how you present, how you wrap things up, install a couple of psychological triggers, and then we're going to get into this counter offer stage. And you're going to learn a tactic called rebracketing, which is an advanced negotiations tactic. So let's start with the pre-offer stage. Now, I like to say knowledge is power here. You've got to gather information in advance. So don't be afraid to ask questions, particularly about motivation. Even though we're taught never to reveal our client's motivation, and you absolutely should not. If asked these questions, it is interesting how often the other agent will volunteer certain pieces of information that are very useful to you in a negotiation. Now, you don't work for the other seller, so it's not offside for you to ask those questions. So don't feel bad about that. So when you're gathering information, you want to call the listing agent and ask questions, but never, even if you've already written the offer, never reveal that fact, because they will close up tighter than a drum the minute they know you've put pen to paper already. It's interesting because they're naturally salespeople and promoters. They're going to do what they think is the best thing they can do to get you to write an offer. So if you kind of posture that you haven't made a decision yet, they'll start to volunteer information typically to try to get you to make that decision, which you can use. It's valuable. So always the information gathering is before you've insinuated that there's an offer in play. So you might say something like, my clients do like the home. They're considering it. They've narrowed it down to a couple. Tell me a little bit about, why they're selling it. It's a really nice property. Why are they selling the property, right? Just a basic question, right? Asked in an innocuous way. They're going to give you, they might tell you there's a divorce. They might tell you that they're downsizing. They might tell you the information that you need. Then you say, great, I see that you purchased it back, and you can see that from the tax search. Can you just share with me what renovations they've done since buying it? And you're trying to get a baseline of like, okay, what are these folks' expectations? If they've spent $200,000, and you can use that when you're applying the HPI data. So you're just trying to understand kind of their frame of reference, how much they've invested in the property. And, if they've spent a lot of money, you can, obviously compliment them later on a job well done. I like to ask do your clients know where they're going yet? This is an important piece because you want to know if they're facing a time clock of any kind. If they've already bought, that pushes the balance of power to the buyers, right? Maybe sometimes you'll learn that they're behind on payments. Sometimes realtors will volunteer that information. So asking that question first before the question of what would their ideal closing dates be. So what are your clients' ideal closing dates is a secondary question to, do you know where they're going yet? Because you really want to find out if they've already bought. That's the holy grail. Next step, you want to ask, have you guys had any offers yet? And then they'll say, yeah, we have. And so, do you mind me asking why they didn't come together? Was it turned down based on price? Right? You're leading the witness a little bit. You want to find out if they have already turned down an offer. And then you can ask the next question. Say, well, you know, like your buddy, right? You say, well, how foul was the offer? Or how bad was it? And sometimes they'll reveal to you, you know, what that offer was. And then now you've got a frame of reference that you can use to guide your clients and set their expectations. Now, this question is going to be more valuable as we move forward, as rates start to go up, because there's going to be people with mortgages that have big prepayment penalties. And because these low rates all come with usually a fairly large penalty to get out of them, and they're going to be lower than the mortgages available. So the question is, do you know if your client's mortgage is assumable? Because a mortgage that's well down the track of the amortization schedule, I don't know if you guys understand this, but as months go on, the payment between interest and principal starts to change. In the beginning, the first payment you make is the most amount of interest and the least amount of principal. And every single month it changes. If you look at an amortization schedule, by the fourth or fifth year is when it really starts to aggressively pay down principal. And they do this intentionally because they know most people flip out of their mortgage every 5 years. So all of the heavy principal pay down is on the post 5 year period. But there are people who have been in their homes for 7, 10 years. And they're well down the amortization track. So it's just good to know. In this market, you're often in a multiple offer situation, and you don't want to muddy the waters with an assumable mortgage type thing. But in a balanced market where you have a clear shot, this is a really good high-level question to ask. If they say, yeah, let me find out, the other neat thing this does is you get to find out what their mortgage balance is, because you're considering essentially buying their mortgage. So you say, well, can you tell me what the balance is? And of course, that reveals a lot about their financial situation. Later on as well, when you find out their mortgage being assumable, you might be saving somebody as much as $30,000 or $40,000 by assuming their mortgage. So don't forget, this is a big piece. And your clients could effectively afford to pay more for the home because they're going to get a smaller payment, right, by assuming that mortgage. So it's valuable information to know for sure. If they have a ton of equity after you found out, you know, you might find out, well, that my clients don't even have a mortgage, or you might find out, oh, their mortgage is very small, it wouldn't be beneficial. Then you say, do you know if they might consider any vendor financing? Right, that's the question that spins off of somebody who's all cash. Again, that's more of a normal market or even a buyer's market type question, but it's a great thing to find out. Vendor financing, because remember, negotiations are about more than just price. There's price and terms. And one of the best terms that you can get, especially for, say, a first-time buyer, is a little bit of vendor financing that gives them access to conventional mortgage, that 30-year amortization that happens once you get 20% down or more. And you also get to skip the CMHC fee. So for a client that's right on the edge, getting them up over that 20%, say maybe they only have 5, if you can get the vendor to leave 15% in for a couple of years, that's a really beneficial thing for your client. And you can structure it in a way where it's pretty beneficial to the seller as well. If they've got tons of equity and they don't need all of it, they're going to do better on a mortgage than they will putting that money in the bank. All right. Next, we're going to ask, what else is important to your clients? You know, price aside, you know, is there anything else that's important in this negotiation? What you're looking for is a little bit of a bargaining chip. Maybe they need a long closing. Maybe they're looking for a rent back. Maybe they're looking for, you know, a little bit of peace of mind. Maybe they need a really quick close to solve a problem, to take advantage of an opportunity, or to get, you know, to save their credit. But finding out what's important to them. And then on this call, you want to make sure you also confirm the main age of the main systems, the hot water tank, the furnace, you know, the roof, all that kind of stuff. Now, the reason why we ask all these questions is if you don't ask, then you lose the opportunity to obtain these bargaining chips. And a lot of agents will focus almost exclusively on price, and they'll miss the opportunities to strike win-win deals. That's the art of the negotiation, is a give and a take, right? To make it so that both parties can get what they want. Through skillful questioning, you'll also determine who has the upper hand. Now, right now in this market, in the seller's market, more often than not, the sellers have the upper hand. But in a balanced market, it's always interesting to know, who's really in the driver's seat here. Do we have buyers with all the time in the world and sellers that are behind on payments? Or do we have sellers with all the time in the world and buyers who've sold their home and need to be in a place? Like, you kind of need to know everyone's circumstances so that you as the agent really know who has leverage over the other person, right? And then you can use that information, obviously, to guide your clients and their expectations and to just make sure you know the lay of the land before going in. So next, you want to talk about inclusions. Sometimes, it'll tell you right out in the listing what's included, but oftentimes there's pool tables or hot tubs or things that are not written in. And the stance that I take on those items is one of indifference. So I'll ask the agent, I'll say, hey, I noticed you got that pool table downstairs. What are your clients' plans with that? My folks aren't crazy about it, but if it ended up getting left behind, it wouldn't be the end of the world either, right? It's just sort of this indifference. Because if you just write it in, if your client really wants the pool table and you don't take a minute here to posture that indifference, then it becomes valuable at its retail value to the client, right? They're going to want that much more for the home because, oh, you're trying to get my pool table, when in fact, they never wanted to move it in the first place. So asking them, my client's probably just going to get it moved, or they get thrown out, or do your clients want it, is usually the answer that you get. You say, yeah, maybe I can talk them into letting it stay. And then when you write it in later, you can say, hey, feel free to take this out. But you already know they want to leave it. But it's essentially, you're saying this has no value to us whatsoever, right? So you're eliminating the value to whatever it is, a deep freeze or, whatever the leave behind is that's cumbersome to move. Think of like anything that's a real pain in the ass to move is probably not something these guys want to pay somebody to come get the hot tub and move it to the next place. But they probably paid 10, 12 grand for it. And so if you write it in there like it's the thing that you want the most in the world, you're going to pay it. You're going to pay for it. All right. I apologize for my nasally voice this morning. I've got a bit of allergies going on. All right. So now we go to step 2, which is all about building our case. So we've gathered all the information. We've taken great notes. Now we have to figure out, okay, where are we going to guide our clients to in terms of offering? Okay, so understand that in a negotiation, where you start has a lot to do with where you're going to end up and whether or not this thing's going to come together. So getting that opening position right and not letting the clients dictate this process too much. I think a lot of agents defer to their clients. What would you like to offer, right? And they kind of let their clients run this part of the gig. Clients don't want that, for starters. It's very rare that a client prefers to be the person making that decision. They want to be led. Okay, as what all clients crave, being led by a professional in this situation. They're nervous. They're not professional negotiators. It's not up to them where we start. So remember that. Don't use percentages, even though we talk a lot about, our clients on average, especially in a flat market, will boast to the marketplace that, our clients save an average of 2% more than the industry average, and all those quantifiable ways of doing it. Don't rely on those averages when you're talking with your clients and setting expectations, simply for the fact that averages only matter as an aggregate on a one-to-one basis. There's clients that'll pay $100,000 more for a house and get a great deal. And there's clients that'll get $100,000 off a house and they've paid too much. So it's really on an individual basis that you got to take a look and you say, okay, well, this home, it's been on the market for X amount of time, like all the variables, however long it's been on, the repair that it's in, all of that. So don't use percentages to guide your thinking here. You have to use your own sort of gut feeling. Next thing, when coming up with a number, don't use a really round number like 700,000 or 750. Round numbers infer that you're throwing darts or you're throwing shit against the wall to see what'll stick. They often look like just kind of, oh, this is a decent opening position. They definitely don't carry the weight of careful consideration, which is what you want to make your offer seem like it's been carefully considered. So obscure numbers. If you were going to offer 750, offer 751.5, right? Look like you've been agonizing over it. Next thing you got to know, when making an opening position on the buy side, Nines are for dummies. If you get an offer that says that's on a listing that's 800,000 and they come in at 779,000, this is your opportunity to show that agent that they're an idiot. Because why would you want to make your offer seem smaller than it is, right? You would never. It makes sense when you're trying to sell something. It's an old retail trick. Like, here, this $5 item is really only $4.99, so it feels like $4. But if I've seen offers from other agents, and they've offered just slightly less than the round number. Like if the condo is 525, they'll offer me 499.9, and I'll say, what? So for $100, you want my clients to feel like they have a 400 and something $1,000 condo? Like, how is this? I don't get it. Like, but you know why it's happening? Because their client's dictating the process. The client says, well, just offer 499.9, because clients think that real estate prices are just everything's in nine. Don't allow that to happen. If you do it to a person that understands how negotiation works, it makes you look like you have no credibility. So make sure that you never go at anybody at 249 or 779. That's it's a bad move. Round up and go over, right? Give them the whole number, because there's a psychological thing that happens there. If someone thinks they have an $800,000 house, don't offer them anything. Give them their 8015. Right? Even if they're listed at 829, they believe they're in that bracket. Don't disagree with them, or you're not going to make a friend at that negotiating table, especially if you're willing to pay over 8. All right. Lastly, make sure whatever opening position that you come up with, you can back it up somehow. There's a variety of ways that you can do this, but you can't go in there without any way to substantiate your opening position. Otherwise, it has no credibility. So the best way to do it is to prepare a CMA. And of course, we have latitude with CMAs, right? We can change how much per square foot we want to make adjustments for. There's all kinds of things we can do. So if you can put together a CMA with good comps that drives them to a specific price range and have your offer at the top end of that range, that's going to be your best substantiation. Even if, let's just say you could create a range that said it's from 660 to 690, and we've offered you 702. And say they're listed for 729. That the ideal thing would be to set their expectations low with the CMA and then be slightly higher than that. And again, CMAs are slightly subjective. You can use the HPI estimate, which is a really good one, and you can use the information that you gathered earlier about how much renovating they've done. So the HPI estimate, for those that don't know, you can take the day they bought the home, what they paid for it, and then it applies the market factors from the day they bought it to today, specific to their neighborhood and property type. So it's very accurate. And then of course, the only other thing is, the other variable is what did they do in terms of renovations. After that, you can use like an assessed value percentage. You can say the homes in your area it's been selling for 10% more than assessed. This is the weakest approach, but if you have no other way of getting there, you can do that. You can use, in a flat market, you can use what they paid. You say market really hasn't changed since you bought it, but you've spent 50 grand on it. So, we're willing to pay you back for your improvements. So that's another strategy. The one that I like often in conjunction with a CMA is the one that got away. So it's easy to find a home that's sold recently on Matrix that's a little bit bigger, a little bit newer, or just has something that the one you're offering on doesn't have, and that's sold for the price that you guys want to pay, right? Or right around. And you can say, look, my folks, they're very educated. They've seen a lot of homes. We missed out on this one. This is the one they keep going back to. This is the one that kind of got away from us. And so it's their frame of reference on value. And as you can see, it's a little bit bigger. It does have the basement suite, or it does have the pool, whatever the case is. And then you can use that to justify your opening position. That works very well at setting their expectations. And lastly, if you're delivering a lowball offer and there's no way to substantiate it other than just here's what we've got, then I like to use the budget constraints offer. If you're fishing, be apologetic about it. Make sure you let them know, hey, we don't mean to be insulting. These folks are first-time buyers, or they're investors, whatever the situation is. And, we'd love to make a deal. However, we're constrained by budget. And, given the fact that you guys have been on the market X amount of days and still for sale, we just thought you'd probably rather see the offer than not. So, but you're letting them know this is based on our budget, not anything else other than that. So deal with it if you wish. That's the weakest approach, but at least it's better than nothing, right? You got to explain where they're at. And all this is leading up to the fact that your job is to try to get the best possible counteroffer from them on the first go. That's your mission. And instead of thinking of it as a counteroffer, think of it as you're getting them to reprice their home based on how good your presentation was. And then I'll share with you how that works in the end to get your client a better deal. So now, step one, we've asked a bunch of questions. Step two, we've done the work to figure out how we're going to substantiate our offer. Now we go to step three, we're going to actually present the offer, okay? So you call the agent and you ask them, you say, hey, are your folks in town? And they'll go, yeah, why? You say, well, are they easy to get a hold of? And they'll say, yeah, what? And you say, well, my folks are, again, like I say, we've narrowed it down to two. You know, I think I'm going to try and push them your way. So you often say, you know, they'll say, do you have an offer? You say, well, not yet. You know, like I say, we've narrowed it down to a couple homes. I'm doing my best to get them to write on yours. So you're playing good cop. And so yeah, so if I was able to get them on paper, would we be meeting at your office or would you prefer their house? So that's an alternate close, right? Or, you know, in this market, you might want to do it over Zoom. But the best thing is to do it at the office, face to face. That's the most powerful. Get people out of their home, get them into an office environment, home court advantage to the sellers at their office, and you present there and then you leave. That's the best scenario that you want to go for. Next best would be at their home, but now they've got emotional, sentimental attachment to their things in their living room, so it's hard for them to be as objective about it. And then third would be a Zoom. Fourth would be a conference call. And fifth would be like a bomb video that accompanied your offer in terms of the hierarchy of effectiveness in terms of being able to influence the outcome. So the goal here is to get them to agree to let you present. Most agents are going to push back. So if you get pushback, make sure they understand that your client only cares about, you know, putting a deal together. You're not going to be there to browbeat them. You're not there to grandstand in front of their clients or anything like that. They're going to have hesitation. Say, no, I appreciate your hesitations. There's a lot of realtors that do this poorly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show up. I'm going to make you look like a rock star. I'm going to present our offer in a positive light, be there to answer any questions, eliminate any misunderstandings. And I think it's going to help us get this deal together, which ultimately is what we are looking to do, right? And they're going to go, yes. And you'll say, I know when you represent buyers, I'm sure that, you know, in your experience, you know, you're an old pro, that negotiating face-to-face is the way, you know that. And, you know, I'm just trying to offer my clients that same level of representation. So you're complimenting them in a backhanded way of saying, I'm sure you do this too, but, you know, we want to get this deal together and this is how I represent my clients. Usually that'll overcome it. If they still say, no, just send it over, then, you know, you say, well, that's where you go down to plan B, plan C, right? In terms of the different, you got to make sure you've got 100% buy-in on this before. If they don't, you got to rinse and repeat. If they get off the phone without seeing a value, they're going to call their client, and their client will say, I don't want to meet. Just get them to send the offer over. And then they call you back and say, okay, the client doesn't want to meet. Like, you really have to make sure they understand the value, and that value is this is going to give us a much better chance of pulling a deal together. Okay. Then you're going to share with them a little bit about your fee agreement. You can say, I want to address one other thing. Yeah. Well, you'll see a commission clause in our offer. And I understand you're offering 3 and 1.25 on the listing, and that's fine. Our buyers all sign a buyer's agency agreement after sitting through a buyer's presentation. Once they understand our fees and services, they give us the green light to negotiate our full fee, which is 3.5 and 1.75 out of the proceeds of anything they buy. And so, again, it's my clients bringing the proceeds. So, and they're fine with it. So let's not make this the focal point of the negotiation. I just wanted to point it out to you, and I'll share that again when we present the offer. But I do not want to see it crossed out. This is what it takes to keep our big machine rolling. So they can just factor that into their negotiations as they go back and forth, right? Slight nuance. In a situation where you're in a multiple offer situation, don't put your clients at a disadvantage. That's why we have that little box to tick on the TRS where you in multiples if you didn't get the full fee. You don't want to put your clients at a disadvantage based on extra commission. But in a situation where you have a clear shot, we have proven time and time again that it is not the client that ends up paying this commission. It becomes a non-issue once you get it through our clients and you follow the steps I'm going to teach you. Your clients will actually buy homes cheaper than the industry average, and you're going to get paid that quarter point more than the typical industry average, which is a win-win, because we're offering a better service. Okay. So we get to the offer stage, and before you go in, take a minute to visualize the outcome, right? Center yourself, get into that sort of Zen place where you feel confident and you're going in, you're prepared, you've done the work. Be a little bit early. Have the key parts of your offer memorized, just the basics, right? You want to have your subject removal, the subjects that you've got in there, have all that stuff memorized, the dates, the closing dates, the purchase price, the deposit amount. These are all pretty standard stuff that you can just memorize before you're going in. It helps because then you're not reading the offer. All right. Once you get in and you meet them for the first time, always just open, big smiles, be super appreciative of their willingness to meet, because they're going to be uncomfortable and you want to disarm them. This is a good time to also share the reason why you do it this way. You say, we believe that putting faces to names, working collaboratively is going to prevent miscommunications and ultimately give us the best chance of bringing the deal together. So I appreciate you honoring my process here and looking forward to, like I say, working with you guys to get everybody what they want, which is you guys want to sell your home, my clients want to buy a home. So let's see if we can do that, right? And so you're disarming the situation. Then you want to explain the difference between a collaborative approach versus a combative approach. So I might say something like, far too often, realtors, they sort of confuse themselves as litigators, and our job is not to litigate against one another or browbeat each other, but like I say, work collaboratively to bring this deal together. You do this for a couple of reasons. Number one, it sets the stage. Number two, you want to be known in this business as an easy person to do deals with. Other agents will love working with you, and we hear it all the time about Vantage agents is that, wow, I just love doing deals with them. It's so easy because they work collaboratively and they take these extra steps to prevent misunderstandings. At this point, this is another reason why people love working with us. Take a minute to compliment the other agent. So you say, well, I got to share with you, Jeff has done an amazing job so far. It was the marketing that he did that got my client's attention in the first place. And him and I have had a fair bit of dialogue so far already. And he's done a bit of a heavy lifting on this negotiation for you already. I have a pretty good sense of what it is that you're looking to accomplish out of this move. And so we've kind of jumped, we've gotten a little further thanks to the negotiations that he's done already. So you're layering on some nice appreciation to that other agent. They're going to like that, of course. Next, you want to compliment the owners on something, right? But be authentic. But usually they have pride of ownership. So you say, my clients love your home. It's obvious that you guys have pride of ownership and you've taken wonderful care of it. My folks have a very high standard as well for homes, and they appreciate the level of care that you've kept the home at, like something like that, right? Make them feel comfortable with you. I like to use like a mirror and matching. If their body language is really casual, I've got really casual body language. If they're stood up straight in their chair, I'm stood up straight in my chair. So match them in that conversation early on. You can gauge, who's kind of running it between husband and wife. Sometimes the wife is the one that you got to pay a little more attention to, sometimes the husband, but you want to make sure you take the minute to address both of them and try to match them as best you can. The next thing, and this is probably the most important piece, is you want to connect the client to connect your client to the sellers, okay? That empathy between the two parties is huge, because if they're a faceless, person that they don't understand anything about them, and you see this right now in multiple offers, everybody's trying to make their clients seem as sympathetic as possible and, check out our dog and our kids and the photos and all that stuff, right? That's all because that stuff actually does work. But taking the time to actually tell a bit of a narrative, a bit of a story around the clients is even more effective. So the most effective thing that you can do, and it doesn't work all the time, but if you can get the seller to see themselves in the shoes of the buyers 15 years ago, or if they see the buyers as them 15 years ago or whenever they bought the home, it works really well with empty nesters who are maybe selling the home to a young family, right? I mean, that's the holy grail of empathy when, someone has all these memories in the home and they feel like they're passing the torch to a family that's reminiscent of them when they raised their family there. something like that, right? If you can get any kind of narrative and you pick up little cues as you walk through the home, so you can see what's important to these folks or try to connect them somehow, right? If you see that they're, they've got dogs, connect on the dog side. If you see that they're golf lovers, connect on the golf and how they love being this close to the golf course. Whatever it is, try to find a way to create commonalities between the buyer and seller. Sellers want to sell to someone who's like themselves. They just do. We all want to leave our house to another version of ourselves. It's just human nature. It's a very emotional thing. All right. So you've made your client likable. You're likable. You've connected their realtor. The realtor likes you. This is one big kumbaya session. Now it's time to get into the actual offer. So be gentle, but often start with, a bit of a narrative about your process to get to this point. You say, we saw a lot of homes to get here before arriving at your property. And, my folks are what we call an educated buyer. And they've seen a lot of homes. They've got a really good sense of market value, and they know value when they see it. A bit of a compliment in there, but also a bit of a warning that, my clients are no dummies, right? So after careful consideration, we've narrowed it down to 2 properties. Now, this is a psychological thing where you give your client optionality. In a negotiation, whoever has the most options has the upper hand. So insinuating that there's another property that might work as well is a very effective way of gaining some leverage in the situation. So you say, we've narrowed it down to a couple that'll work. Obviously, yours is the one that they've instructed me to offer on first. And, a little nuance to that, if you want to have like a second folder underneath the first folder that you're presenting, you're not doing anything with that second folder. It's just there as like a subconscious sort of optics of a second offer. But off comes the first one and you open it up. We're going to get started in the presentation. So you'll let them know, say, I've encouraged my clients, this is a really important line, I've encouraged my clients to put their best foot forward. It's important to say that because most people are trying to understand, like, is this an opening position? Is this a one-shot deal? This is like the step brother to the one-shot deal. When you say, I've put my best foot forward, you're not saying it's take it or leave it, but you're saying that I could have come in lower, but this is where I want to really ultimately be, right? And so it's an important line because, again, going back to what I said earlier, your job in this presentation is to get them to reprice their home. And when you insinuate that this is a best foot forward offer, they're going to get as close to that as they possibly are willing to get in that first offer. They will make their largest concession first if they understand where your people are coming from. The next piece is you gotta substantiate it. So you say, well, based on our analysis, we feel like we've come up with a really fair offer for your home. Or you could say reasonable, some sort of word that these are powerful words like reasonable and fair. They have like a neuro-linguistic programming component to it where people will fight the urge to be unreasonable or unfair. And so when you use those words, it's hard for people to want to argue with that. You say, we feel like we're being fair. It's hard for them to say the counter argument to that. So then you want to present the other components in terms of the offer. So always leave price to the end. If you start with price, you'll lose your audience. Even if you're getting nods and they're saying, yeah, and they're hearing you, if you've already shared price, rest assured the only thing that they're doing is calculating the commissions, their mortgage balance, the mortgage penalty. They're doing math in their head, and they can nod and pretend that they're listening to you, but they're not. They're not hearing any of the other pieces of the offer. So you really do have to wait. Okay. And so you'll start at the back, you'll share, we've got some standard inclusions, we've got some, here's our clauses, and you're going to go through and you're going to share the different clauses. You will talk about, the strengthened finance clause. If we have a finance clause in there, you'll talk about our strengthened inspection clause and what the benefits are to them. You don't have to worry about them nickel and diming you. We already know that your furnace is 14 years old. We already know the roof is 22 years old. We've factored that in, right? That's been accounted for in our offer. You don't have to worry about us grinding you after the home inspection. It tells us that the roof's on its last legs. We know that, right? So you're giving them peace of mind, but you're also reminding them of a couple items on the home that need to be dealt with, right? So you're using that home inspection clause as an opportunity to tenderize them on the price, but also give them confidence that your offer is legit. You want to make sure your clients appear like they've got their ducks in a row, and they should. If they're at this point and we followed the system, they should have their ducks in a row. So, you say we're educated buyers. We've been pre-approved with our lender. All of their docs have been submitted. You're speaking matter-of-factly about how organized these folks are, and we're not here to waste anybody's time. We've got our ducks in a row. Okay. Then I would point out the fee agreement. You'll see here, there's a term in here that says that we will be compensated 3.5 on the first 100, 1.75% on the balance. I know that is slightly different than what's being offered on the MLS. So I did the math for you. This represents a $1,700 difference between what's being offered and what we're requesting. So just counter accordingly when determining your net dollar. Our clients have received a tremendous amount of additional services, and they've signed off on this, and they're eyes wide open on it. So let's not make it a focal point of the negotiations. Just factor it in, right? And then you're letting them know that stays. That's not one of the items we're crossing out. No, this is important. Don't leave people hanging too long. Don't read the contract line by line. That's why they have a realtor to read it to them. So you don't have to talk about cleaning clauses. You don't have to explain all that stuff. You're talking about the nuts and bolts, the meat of the offer. Terms, inclusions, dates, subjects, when do they, the main subjects. I only really talk about finance and inspection. And then I say you've got a laundry list of the usual suspects that we use just to keep everybody safe, and your agent will take a moment to share those with you. But I'll use the the big clauses, or if I have a backup offer clause or something like that in there, I might explain those. But everything else, let their realtor deal with it. That's not what you're there to do. Okay, you're not there to read them a document. You're also not going to leave them hanging too long, because it's uncomfortable, right? Like, what's the price? Let's go. That's what they're thinking, right? Like, give me the price, give me the price, give me the price, right? But you're making them kind of suffer through all this other stuff because you want them to be listening, and they are. They're listening a lot more than they would be if you already told them the price anyways. So again, when you get to that end and you're about to deliver the price, it's very important that you sit up straight, you're confident, and you deliver it with likability, but a ton of confidence as well. So you say, so as I mentioned, let's get to the price. I'm sure you guys are waiting to hear it. We've offered $851,000, and then just shut up. Zip it. You got it. And you're watching for response. You want to see the body language. They're not going to say much usually, but you'll see body language, displeasure. You'll see whether or not they're, maybe they're happy about it. There's all kinds of little reactions that you'll spot. So it's really important that you just take a moment to catch the nonverbal cues that are happening there. Usually their realtor will stop them from saying anything, and they'll just say, hey, well, yeah, okay, great. Well, thank you. We'll take it from here, right? And he'll try to step in, or she will try to step in. Once you've witnessed this reaction, however dramatic or however subtle, you want to move on to the substantiation phase. So you might say, I respect this is a little lower than you might have hoped for, but I want to take a second just to show you how we got here. So now you're going to spend a little bit of time on the logic, and you're going to say, so here's the market analysis that I did for my clients. My clients are very analytical, so they ask, even if they're not, you say my clients are very analytical, and so they've asked me to do this really deep level of analysis on their home. So here's the process we went through, and you can see that based on the 3 most comparable homes, gave us a range of between here and here, and you can see we've actually offered you a little bit more than that. Like, that's the best scenario. Or we could say what we did was we used an algorithm, use the HPI. So we took when you bought it, we applied market factors. We even gave you 100% of your rentals, even though some of it's been depreciated since then. Obviously, flooring you did 7 years ago is probably not worth what you paid at this point, because it's halfway through its, economic life at this point. But even still, we'll give you, full dollar for that. That's how we came up with the price, right? You're giving them something logical, or you're saying, here's the one that got away, or you're saying, my clients have no money, here's what we've got. Like, but you got to substantiate it somehow. So that's that work you did in step 2. You're busting that out right now. And again, the main thing you're trying to do here is get them to reprice their home. Okay, and this logic is the part where you're trying to influence the situation. If the home's been the same price for a while without a price reduction, you would say, we're seeing that a fair amount for sellers right now, where homes are sitting on the market. You're not priced way out of the market. You're kind of in that what we call no man's land, where you're 3 to 5% high, which is why you're sitting on the market, but you're still getting showings. You're still getting people coming to the table, sniffing around. So we say that's no man's land. So typically, if we were working with a seller, we would reprice this home with a 3% price reduction. That would get you what we call in the market, and you'd have people fighting over the house, right? So using that little bit of logic to address the days on market. Again, not happening a ton in the seller's market, but this is a pretty good a pretty good tactic in a, if there's been 40 days on the market with no price reductions, you might share that, our system is that we don't let a home sit on the market for more than 14 to 21 days at the same price, because we feel that's about how much exposure you need before you can find out whether or not the market rejects you at that price. It's a powerful thing to say. The market rejects you at that price, but you're disassociating it. You're saying, this is how we do it with our sellers. We're not saying the market's rejecting you. We're just saying with our sellers, 14 to 21 days go by, they're not sold. We feel the market's rejected us at that price. So you're influencing here to try to get them to reprice their home. Then what I like to do is I draw, let's say they're listed at $699,000 and they've been on the market for 40 days without a price reduction, and your offer is $660, for example. Well, you could say, look, a 3% adjustment on this would be a $20,000 adjustment. That would give you the ability to attract some new interest on the home. So if we were to go from $699 to $679, an offer of $660 wouldn't feel so out of line, right? So what you're trying to do is you're trying to say our offer is in reference to where we think you should be, not where you are. You guys understand what I mean? Okay, so let's see where we go next. After I deliver it, I will give them an opportunity to share some information with me again. So I'll say, does any of this make sense? Does this make sense to you guys? Again, you're trying to gauge the reaction, or you want them to push back and say, well, no, you haven't factored in this, or you haven't factored in that. So great, well, that's good information. Thank you. Right? You're right, I hadn't considered that, or some counterpoint or rebuttal to it. But what you want to hear is their reaction. Be super congenial. You're not condescending. You're not combative. You're just trying to gather more information. You're trying to influence, but in a respectful way. This is people's homes, and you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars of their money. So there's a lot of respect that goes into delivering this kind of information. So now you've presented the offer, you've got to the price. It's time to wrap it up, get the heck out of there, let their agent do what they got to do. So I'll usually weave in a question about how they would like to proceed. It's natural, it's unassuming. I say, I want to make sure that my clients don't miss out on the potential of snagging another home if this doesn't look like we're going to be able to get it together. So I don't anticipate that. It looks like we should be able to come to terms, right? You're cautiously optimistic, but knowing sooner than later would be really appreciated. Obviously, it's a market that's moving briskly, and my folks aren't looking to play the Arabian Bazaar game all night. Right? Again, you're kind of going back to that best foot forward, kind of restating that we're not looking to do this back and forth thing all night. Don't say it's a one-shot deal. Obviously, that bluff will get called 99 times out of 100, and your whole credibility is eroded at that point, because if you say it's a one-shot deal and they counter you anyway, and then your client still plays ball, you don't have the right later on to say, this is all my clients are going to pay, or, to put your foot down. And you need to have that foot or that hammer later, right? When you get within striking distance and you let folks know this is it, they have to believe you. So if you start with, this is a one-shot deal, that bluff will get called and you have no credibility. In a negotiation, remember, silence is golden. It's your friend. Give people the opportunity to speak. You could do a wonderful job of presenting, and then you could talk your way right out of a sale just because the silence might make you feel uncomfortable. So remember, you're the pro, and the thing that distinguishes a professional from an amateur is their comfort and comfortableness in silence. And so it actually communicates confidence when you're fine to just shut up and just watch the room and let them speak next. It's a power move. It gives you the upper hand. So if they have no other questions, you thank them again, and you let them know that you really appreciate them honoring your process. And again, just my folks would like to know fairly quickly. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to head back to the office, and then I'll speak with Jeff or whoever the other realtor is pretty quick. Let's try to keep the ball rolling on this. So you kind of get the permission to move through time quickly, right? You don't want to just show up, throw up, and then leave and let them think that they have all the rest of the night to sit on it, right? We want to keep things moving fast. Never ever let the sellers know that your clients have to have it, even if they do. Never give away the upper hand. The negotiating edge always goes to whoever appears to need it the least. That's why we show up with, we've narrowed it down to 2, right? You want to leave your clients optionality. And when you're listening to sellers, remember this: sellers will feign indifference towards selling. It's usually a cover for major motivations. So if they go out of their way to tell you, I don't know, we don't care, if we can't get our number, we'll just sit on it, like some comment like that, where it's usually the husband that'll step up and say something really like, not arrogant, but very like matter of fact about how they don't care, that's usually a thinly veiled cover for someone with big motivation. Okay. So leave your client with plenty of options, plenty of time, and the optics of being a cash buyer. That's the best place they can be. So now we're into the counter offer stage. Hopefully you've done such a great job of influencing that you've got them to reprice their home. Because statistically, 90% of deals will come together at the middle or the perceived middle. And this is the important nuance to it, the perceived middle. See, negotiations, especially Canadians, like our culture, we like to feel like we're giving equally, right? Okay, you come down 10, I'll come up 10. You come down 5, I'll come up 5. Like it's almost like a game of mirroring, matching concessions to find the middle, which is why deals that do come together, like 90 some odd % of them will come together at the midpoint between a fair opening offer and a reasonable list price. And that's just the amateur's approach. So what most people do is they'll bracket the discount they want. If they want a $10,000 discount, they'll offer $20,000 less. If they want a $20,000 discount, they'll come in $40,000 less, knowing intuitively that they're probably going to have to make a series of concessions that takes them to the middle. So that's what most people will do. And that's great. You're going to use that psychology to our advantage. So bracketing is what I just explained, just double what you're trying to get. Rebracketing is a nuance where you do such a great job of getting them to reprice their home that now, once they've done that, that is now the gap that you're looking to close. And you're going to work your way towards the middle of that. Okay, so it's a big difference in terms of where you end up. If you can get them to knock 10,000 or 15,000 off their home initially to get it repriced to where it needed to be, then you worked your way towards the perceived middle. And by the time this process is drawn out, they won't know the difference. It'll feel the same, right? The key here is that you don't consider that first move of theirs to be a concession. You consider that to be them repricing the home. That's how you have to think about it. And you never reference the gap with the other realtor until they've made that concession. Or you wait until you've made a counter and they've made their second counter. So now you've moved once and they've moved twice. You want to make sure that they've always got an extra move over you all the way. So you don't even, you kind of throw that first one out. You say, look, you're on the market. It wasn't selling. So here's your new price. Now let's talk the middle. This is all happening behind the scenes. So when you reference that gap the first time, so whether it's after they come back to you with a counter offer, let's say their house is listed at 500,000, you come in at 450, and they come back at 480 now, and you're at 450. You could say, oh wow, okay, so we have a $30,000 gap to cover here. You didn't reference it before when you had a $50,000 gap, because now once you reference it, you say, how are we going to do this? This is that collaborative approach, right? We've got this $30,000 gap to cover. So now it's your job equally between you and that realtor to figure out how you're going to close a $30,000 gap, right? Which might involve a $15,000 concession from each of you, logically, right? And they won't even realize what just happened there. It's a remarkable thing. It's all about how you posture and when you start to discuss the gap. Okay, so the next piece with rebracketing is you got to tenderize the other side a little bit too, especially when you make that first offer or that second one. It's really good after you've presented the offer and before you've got the counter, if you can get the other agent on the phone and say, hey, I want to just share with you a little bit about my folks. We've made an offer on a couple properties before, and I know their style. If they don't get a great counter offer back that shows your clients want to play ball, they will walk, right? And so you're saying, like, don't bring us. And the reason why you need to do this is because if a client comes back with a $2,000 discount off that first one, and you've got a $30,000 chasm to close, psychologically it's impossible, because your clients are going to want to come up $2,000 now, and now you're going to have a $28,000 gap to close or $26,000 gap to close. And these people psychologically they're going to say, well, like they've dug their heels in. They get dug in at that point. It's like when you go to the store to buy a new suit, the guy that's selling you the suit is not going to sell you the tie first and then the $1,000 blazer. They're going to sell you the blazer first, so your frame of reference on the tie is nothing. You understand what I mean? So the same thing is, you got to get them to reprice the home with the $20,000 drop, so that this incremental $5,000 and $2,500 drops that come next feel like nothing in comparison to what they've already done. So you've got to sometimes get that other agent on side, because they don't always know that. And again, remember that in many cases, the client is dictating the process. The agent is not influencing. They don't know how, they don't have the skills. So you need to influence through that agent sometimes. And you got to say, look, I need you to understand something here. My folks will walk. I know them. Maybe it's culturally, or maybe it's just who they are. They'll walk if we don't get a counter that suggests that your folks are willing to play ball. And so then they can take that information back to their sellers, get you that great counter offer that you need. Always encourage your clients too, right? The negotiation is not all one way. A lot of times you're influencing your own folks. And so you let them know, make your largest concession first. A lot of people don't know how to do this, and they think that it's a bullish move or it's a show of strength to only come up a little bit, like that's going to help them. That'll derail the motivation. If you're trying to close a big gap, you need one party to make a big concession, another party to make an equally big concession, and you take a big gap and you make it a small gap quickly. That's your goal. You have to take a big gap and make it small as fast as possible. If you get a little $2,000 counter over here and a $2,000 counter over here, you've run out of gas, and it feels to everyone like, well, I guess this isn't going to come together, right? So it's very important that you're influencing both sides so that both people will make their largest concession first. Then you've got this manageable gap, and you will go back and forth, usually with another $5,000 here, $75K here, and you're going to have, like I say, equal concessions. And it's just going to feel like you're collaborating with the other side until you get within $3,000 to $7,000 of it being done. And this is almost all deals will come together when we've suggested that we split the difference, right? Both people will dig in at one point. This is it. This is all I can do. And you won't get all the way there. You're going to get, like I say, somewhere between $2,500 and $7,500 away from the deal being done. And you're going to have two parties that are dug in. Now, the goal is, again, prior to suggesting that we're going to split the difference, you want to make sure that they've come down 4 times to your 3 or 3 times to your 2. They've made one additional move, right? Because you're working towards the middle after throwing away their first move. So you just want to make sure when you suggest, because splitting of the difference is fairly common, but who suggests it, that's the nuance. Right? You want to be the one to suggest it, and you want to be the one to suggest it after they've been the one that moved most recently. So you feel like you've knocked as much as you possibly can out of them. The realtor's told you, I don't think there's any more. I don't think I can get another penny out of them. Once you hear that, hopefully you're within, like I say, that striking distance. And at that point is when you might start to suggest a splitting of the difference. Now, you can let some time go by, provided you're not in a multiple offer. You can let an hour or two go by, let everybody worry that maybe they lost the deal. And you can go back to that realtor like you're all bloodied and bruised, and you say, hey, I don't know, my folks are pretty dug in too. Your folks seem like they're dug in. I don't even know if I could get this done, but do you think we could split the difference here? Do you think there's any chance of that happening? Can we saw this thing down the middle and call it a day, right? I think that's the only reasonable way we're going to be able to do this. And again, you're the one suggesting it. Sometimes you'll even be doing this when they've made 4 moves and you've made 2, right? Based on it. So there's 2 times where you can gain the upper hand. When you get them to reprice their home and you throw that one away, and when they've made their last counter, and this is the time when you suggest splitting of the difference. And that will pull it over to the middle, the perceived middle, well on your side of the ledger. So that's rebracketing. So that's a 101 negotiation strategy. This won't work every single time. This isn't like, a magic bullet, but this is going to give you bits and pieces that you can use and grab, and a system or a process that you can follow where you can stand tall to know that you're operating in the top 1% of agents in terms of aptitude when it comes to negotiations. So we've got more. There's other cool nuances to this. There's like a 202 that's a little bit more advanced, but I think let's get this in practice. Let's get a few reps in on this process, and we'll layer on some more exciting stuff after that. Any questions? We're finished with a few moments.
I just had one, actually, where will I be able to find this video in the drive.
Yeah, well, I'll upload the video shortly.
Nice.
And then there's also a document called Negotiating the Vantage Way, which I will send you. It has a little bit more information than I shared with you today. But yeah, you'll have access to all this.
Okay.
The one thing I didn't share, but it's important to mention, is the number one influencer in all of this is time. And one thing you need to be mindful of at all times is time on our side? Is it working for us or against us? So some examples of that would be, you present the offer, but you explain that your client's in town to do a deal this week. They've got 3 they like, and they're going to leave with, somebody that's willing to play ball, right? You're trying to take their need and turn it into an advantage, but knowing that they're here to do a deal and you've only got that moment, you actually also realize that time is not really on your side. You're posturing like it is, but you got to consider that. If the sellers have already bought, time is not on their side. If your buyers have already sold, time is not on their side, right? And so trying to understand how time is influencing all parties is a really, really important piece. So you got to be thinking about that when you go into a negotiation. Am I working with leverage here because time is on my side, or am I working with a disadvantage here because time is working against me? And how does that compare to where the sellers are positioned? What is their relationship with time right now? So always a good thing to try to understand. Any other questions?
Back to the, I know this is not super to do with the negotiating, but I just had this question for the longest time about pricing at 999. I just, even on the listing side, like I know it's a psychological thing that people think it's cheaper or than it really is, but like when you're listing something, isn't it better to have it always ending with zeros? Because in search fields, if you're looking up to a certain thing, you don't want to be missed if it's like 499 and you're looking 500 up to 700.
100%. And I shared this a couple of years ago with our team, and some people, I still see listings coming in with 9s, but absolutely, that's an antiquated way of marketing homes. And you would way rather be, if you price something at 499, you are invisible to people who are searching between 500 and 550. Why wouldn't you want to be the least expensive option in someone's search field, right? That doesn't make any sense why you would want to be totally exempt to a whole group of buyers. So yeah, I think there's times where maybe getting under $1 million psychologically, like at 999.9, sometimes that has an advantage. If you've tried it at $1 million and it didn't go anywhere and you're repricing the home to try to attract new interest, that wouldn't be where I'd start, because for the same reason, at $1 million to $1.2 million is a lot of people's search criteria. A lot of people do not see themselves, maybe it's ego or otherwise, as a person that would buy a home for under $1 million. So their search criteria doesn't even show those. So why would you want to be invisible? Park it right on the center line, and you've got, not double the options, but certainly more. So you're right. Anytime I see anybody doing the 9s thing on either side, I just assume they're not well informed.
That's what I thought too. And I'm like, okay, I just want to get AJ's perception on this, because I thought, I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me, but.
Good. It's cool that you knew that intuitively. Good job.
Well, that was really valuable today.
Good. I'm glad. I got time for one more question if anybody has it. Otherwise, I got to move on, and I'm sure you guys do too. Nada? Okay, well, we'll share this stuff with you here shortly, and the video, once I get it uploaded, I will send you a link as well.
Awesome. Thanks, AJ.
Okay, have a terrific day. Bye.